We've all been told that more FPS is always better, but uncapped frame rates can actually make your game feel worse. If your frame rate is jumping wildly between 350 and 200, you are fighting your own hardware. Today, we are going to look at why a lower capped frame rate, specifically one that matches your 1% lows, is the secret to pro-level responsiveness. We will cover the RivaTuner setup that makes this possible and explain why your aim will instantly feel locked in once you make the switch. Let's look at the math. At 350 FPS, a frame is delivered every 2.8 milliseconds. At 200 FPS, it is 5 milliseconds. That sounds like a loss, but it isn't. If your system hits 350 and then dips to 200 during the gunfight, your frame time is swinging between 2.8 and 5 milliseconds randomly. This inconsistency is a micro-stutter. Even if you cannot see it as a total freeze, your brain feels it as jitter. A flat line at 200 FPS means every single frame arrives at exactly 5 milliseconds, predictable, consistent, and smooth. This consistency is where your aim truly improves. Aiming is a feedback loop. Your eye sees a target, your brain calculates the distance, and your hand moves the mouse. If the visual feedback is inconsistent, meaning the target jumps 3 pixels one frame and 5 pixels the next, your muscle memory cannot build a reliable map. When you flatten that frame time graph, you give your brain a stable stream of data. Your flicks become more precise because the speed of the game world never changes. You aren't just playing better, you are allowing your muscle memory to actually work. This also drastically improves visual tracking. Think about an enemy running across your screen. In an uncapped scenario with high variance, the enemy might appear to teleport or micro-skip during heavy action, like when an explosion happens and your frames dip. By capping at your 1% low, you ensure that even during the most intense moments, the enemy's movement remains a fluid, continuous motion. This makes it significantly easier to keep your crosshairs centered on a moving hitbox because the enemy isn't jittering through the environment. It looks like a movie, not a slideshow. Alright, let's get technical. To set this up, you're going to need RivaTuner Statistics Server, or RTSS. It usually comes bundled with MSI Afterburner, but you can grab it standalone too. First, open the RTSS interface. On the right-hand side, you'll see a box labeled Frame Rate Limit. Before you enter a number, you need to find your 1% lows, the frame rate your PC can consistently maintain even during intense explosions or gunfights. Open MSI Afterburner, go to the Monitoring tab in Settings, and ensure 1% low FPS is checked to show an on-screen display. Hop into a match and play for a few minutes. The lowest consistent number you see during heavy action is your target. This number is your performance floor, and using it as your cap is what eliminates the jitter caused by frame rate spikes. Don't just guess a number here, enter your 1% low value that we talked about earlier. This tells the software exactly where to build that floor. Next, click on the Setup button on the lower right corner. Go to the General tab. Under Statistics Properties, set the frame time calculation point to frame presentation. Most limiters measure from the start of the render, but presentation measures the exact moment the frame hits the API. This ensures your flatline graph is actually what is being shown to your eyes. It is the most accurate way to monitor smoothness and aligns perfectly with what professional tools like PresentMon report. To understand why frame presentation is the secret to a professional-grade setup, you have to look at how your PC actually talks to your monitor. Most standard FPS limiters measure from frame start, which tracks when the CPU begins working on a new frame. The problem is that every frame takes a different amount of time to render. If you limit at the start, the final delivery, the presentation, to your monitor still jitters because of those varying render times. By switching RTSS to measure at the presentation point, you are forcing the limiter to sync with the exact moment the finished frame hits the API to be shown on screen. This matters because your monitor operates on a rigid physical clock called Hertz. By setting RivaTuner to frame presentation, you shift the measurement from the start of the render to the exact moment the frame hits the display API. When your frame rate is capped to match the refresh rate rhythm, or a consistent 1% low, the frames arrive in perfect synchronization with the monitor's refresh cycle. This alignment ensures that the OLED's near-instant pixel response isn't wasted on staggered data, resulting in a motion clarity that feels perfectly locked to the hardware. With variable refresh rate, VRR, enabled, be it FreeSync, Adaptive Sync, G-Sync, etc., your monitor's refresh rate will dynamically fluctuate to match your game's FPS 1-to-1, providing perfect smoothness as long as you stay within the monitor's maximum refresh rate range. To ensure your gameplay looks as fluid as possible, under Compatibility Properties, cycle the Enable Framerate Limiter to Front Edge Sync. Standard Async limiters often add a frame of buffer to keep things stable, which creates that floaty, heavy mouse feel. Front Edge Sync applies the delay immediately before the frame is presented. This gives you the absolute lowest possible latency for a capped frame rate. You get the stability of a cap with the snappiness of an uncapped setup. It is truly the best of both worlds for competitive gaming. Finally, Uncheck Enable Passive Waiting in the RTSS settings. When this is on, the software tries to save a bit of CPU power by letting the system sleep between frames. But that often leads to tiny, inconsistent stutters in your frame pacing. By disabling it, you force a busy wait loop that hits your frame targets with microsecond precision. It's the secret to getting that perfectly flat frame timeline and eliminating the micro jitter that can ruin the look of a high-quality recording. Winning gunfights isn't about having the highest peak frames. It is about having the most reliable ones. If your hardware isn't fighting you with jittery frame delivery, you can focus entirely on your target. Stop chasing the ceiling, reinforce your floor, and lock that frame rate. If this guide helped you flatten your graph and land more shots, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. If you want more deep dives into PC optimization and competitive settings, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.